Super legends of super legends, megastars of megastars. We are back with another interview. But before we get Suellen Brook out here, let's give a big, massive, warm welcome to my co-host, Jay Cornell. How are you, Jay?
I'm great. How are you, Dre?
I am amazing. You are very bright and sparky for what time? What time in the morning?
Oh, it's in the wee hours of the morning.
Awesome. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so let's give a big, massive, huge, gigantic welcome to Suellen Brook. I'm not going to say too much about her. I'll get Suellen to come out and say a little bit about herself. Suellen, welcome. How are you?
Hi. Hi, Dre, and hi, Jay. Lovely to see you both.
Lovely to see you.
Also meeting up with you again after this amazing, after the amazing accolades that we got together for our best #1 selling book.
Yeah, it has been amazing. So we thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Suellen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you help, all the things that you do, and then we'll get into it.
Hey. So, guys, during my working week, it is pretty full. I basically have 2 businesses that run. One of mine is online coaching, where I really work with women. They are just, for whatever reason, bored with dealing with massive anxiety because of the fear of feeling that someone else is going to make a judgment about them. I also work with a lot of clients who have disability. And with the disability clients, I'm really specifically honing in on developing their life skills. Now, the really interesting thing about that side of my business is that I'm outside and I am an equine assisted facilitator. So, with working with the ponies and working with particularly those who have disability, and it could be anything ranging from a very high functioning person who may have autism or Asperger's, right through to intellectual impairment, adults as well as some children with who are involved with child safety, working with them to help them understand all of those little components that go together that help us function better within the community. So it's working on skills like their confidence, trust, how to build really healthy relationships, how to communicate and negotiate with someone else to get a job done. Also, there's a lot of healing that happens with the horses as well. So the horses are incredibly intuitive and they will do a lot of energy balancing with clients, particularly if they're quite emotional and uptight, and help that calm down so that they can actually work quite well with them. It's an incredible experience to see. So that's what I do during my time.
I love that, Suellen. Thank you so much for sharing. So you've been an author before, so you've published like kids' books. How has this journey been, from the start when you said yes, all the way to becoming a best-selling author?
Oh my goodness, Dre. This has been very different because the previous books that I've put together and had edited, they were fun. and they were very much involved with the antics that happen here, because you can imagine with a lot of animals, there are quite a few personalities out there besides my own, some of them being quite strong, and that was completely different. Working with what we were doing with this book, being such a personal different, and to be able to share that in such a way that you knew that there was someone else understand that no matter how bad, and that you just don't know where you're going to find them from, but you can find that resilience, and you can, by taking one step at a time, work your way through to come out the other end. So the experience of writing this book, it was very heartfelt. It just flowed because I'd been in the middle of it and come out the other side of there. But the great thing was that of knowing that there wasn't just myself involved here. The guidance that I had from the team behind me, including you two, was phenomenal. But also, I think being a team effort, knowing that it wasn't just myself putting something out there, that it was a really concentrated, focused, collaborative group that were coming together to help other people. That was the bit that really got me.
Oh, I love that. And can you tell us a bit more about your chapter?
So my chapter started when I suppose my daughter was about 6 weeks of age, and she was diagnosed with a genetic disorder called, for an easy way to describe it, is NF1. And basically what it is that neurofibromatosis, and hers is number 1, not 2, tends to grow tumours around nerve endings within the body. Now, the good side of this is that the tumours are typically benign. The downside of it is where they come up. And with her particular diagnosis, there was was more prone to growing a tumour near the optic nerves. But this little girl, you wouldn't have known that she was any different to anyone else. And it wasn't until she was in year 1 at school, so about 6 years of age, that there was a slight, hiccup, I guess is a good way of putting it, when you see a young 6-year-old starting to go into early puberty. And being a mum, you start asking questions. So I made an appointment and went back to the pediatrician, and I said, well, this is a bit odd. Everything's starting to happen so quickly. So he sent us off for some blood tests, and that came back saying that there was nothing abnormal happening in this young child. Now, that obviously triggered in his mind, we need to investigate further. And he sent us off for an MRI. Now, MRIs, and we're looking at about 25 years ago, were fairly new. So I never knew anything about these machines, and she didn't either. It was a bit of an after-school event for her. So we had an MRI done, and what the result of that was that I was called up to the pediatric surgery after work that same day, which was 6 o'clock at night, and I just knew, I just had the gut feeling that something's going down here, because you don't get asked to turn up there at 6 o'clock at night just to have a chat. So in we went, and in those days you had the X screen, and he said, we found our problem. And I went, oh, okay. Me just not knowing what the problem was going to be. And he pointed out a huge golf ball sized tumour that was smack in the middle of her head, inside the brain. And to make it worse, what was happening is that it was actually starting to grow through the optic nerves in both of the eyes. I didn't have a lot of time to get used to that idea, basically that was, I think, a Wednesday. By the Friday, we were down in the nearest big capital city hospital at the Children's to have a big discussion with a neurosurgeon, and I was given 3 weeks notice, basically, to bring your child back, and we're doing brain surgery. And that's a huge decision to get thrown at you because you're not ready for it. Two, you've got to make a decision for somebody else. And that was tough. I mean, I can make whatever decision I want for myself, but to do that for your child was massive. And it threw me right out, totally out of the water. During that 3 weeks, as you do, you scream, you yell, you wonder why me, you don't want to know anything about it, you fall apart, you try and get yourself together in front of your child, but then when they're not looking, you fall apart again. It's hard looking at other children that are healthy when you go to pick yours up from school. And all of these crazy things start running through your head. Is she going to be able to see it all when she comes out of this? Am I doing the right thing, allowing them to operate on my child? What's she going to be like afterwards? All of these crazy questions, it's the fear of the unknown, and you don't know what's going to happen until they come out of that operating theatre. But to hold it together during that time, I didn't. And I don't really know anyone that, if you say you could hold everything together and not be affected by that, I don't know where your heart is, and I don't know where your head is, because it's really like a massive side blow to the side of your head, just whack. And when you put the question to a surgeon, well, what if I don't give you permission to operate on my daughter? He just looks straight at you and says, well, the option there is she's going to go blind in both of her eyes totally. And that's not really an option I was willing to take at that stage. I felt I had no option but to be there and to help her through. So the waiting, the not knowing, the intense feeling of, at that stage, feeling that I was really thrown into this by myself. My husband at that stage was suffering from PTSD, and he was in a different place, not one of being supportive, because he couldn't. And I think one of the most challenging places for me to be through that whole time would have been in the children's ICU as she came into that afterwards. Because in a pediatric ICU, you have a doctor and 2 highly trained pediatric nurses to each bed in there. And the hearing of the machines, listening to oxygen, beeping of monitors, the silence and whispering between staff, that whole scenario for hours on end, when you're just listening to these machine monitors, and when drips running out, they start beeping, and every child in that particular room is highly critical. That is a very unnerving and unrealistic place to be.
Oh, Alan, I can imagine what that would feel like. So I don't have kids myself yet, and just man. So this leads to our next question. Actually, I'm going to put 2 questions in one. So I'm thinking, how do you get over all of those fears? And you've alluded to it then. And for anyone that reads the book, if you want them to take away one thing, what would that be? Or maybe there's 1 or 2 takeaways that you could share.
Okay. So with my daughter, she has this condition and it's progressive, which means that as she gets older, it's going to continue with her. So when she opened her eyes in the morning after the surgery, and the first thing that comes out of her mouth, here I am, like I'm drained, I'm exhausted, I'm emotionally just have nothing left. And this 6-year-old opens their eyes and says, and I said, oh, darling, how you going? You feeling okay? And the first thing she says to me, I'm hungry. Can I have Pepsi and a donut? And I don't know what overcame me then, but there was this huge relief. I nearly burst out laughing, which was the craziest place to be to actually laugh, because it wasn't the place where anyone was laughing. Everything was so serious. But for this, I thought, wow, fear left once she actually spoke. The fear dissipated. I still had no idea what she could really see, what she couldn't see. She knew that I was there. And then she asked for the most off the wall thing for breakfast, which she would never have been given at home. But it didn't matter. The fact was that she came out of that and she was talking. She spent a week in hospital. Through that time, I just knew I really had to start getting myself strong again. And when we got home, I focused on that, and I had to. And I never really understood when I was younger. I was given lots of responsibility. And to some extent, it would really, as a teenager, for want of a better word, really piss me off, because I had to be the responsible one. I was the one who always had to make sure things were done, had to look after an adopted brother that I have. I was the one who always was the one that had to get things right. I had to be involved in lots of things outside of school. Looking back at that, it was those things and being placed in really stressful situations and having to overcome them and just get on with the job and deal with it, I believe, has taught me to get to the stage of where I am and who I am today, and also to get through that event, because I really had to pull on every single part of me that I knew as a resourceful thing, because besides putting her in the hands of experienced people that were doing the surgery, there was no one else could fix anything. You couldn't fix it. You couldn't just think, right, well, here's a plan B and here's a plan C. There was no plan B or plan C. It was deal with it. So I became very strong thinking about the sort of things that I needed to do to move forward. And I started going to gym. I was walking on the beach. I started to make sure that I kept enough energy left so that I had it for her during the day, for my family. I have some very, very close, supportive cousins and friends, and my parents who were still alive at the time. They were the ones who were there also for me. But really, it was understanding that fear, when it comes upon us, can be really disabling. It can stop you in your tracks, just like you've just run into the back of a bus. But to move it forward, you really have to dig deep inside. No one can do it for you. You have to find that grit. You have to find that inner strength. And for me, I've come across having to deal with quite intense fear a number of times. And what I would like other people to take away is that we can get messed up in our head and things can go haywire in there, just like a ball of string that you've just electrified, and there's thoughts going round and round and round. And if you allow it to take hold of you and stay there, and you don't start thinking somewhere how logically of finding out the how and the why and what you're going to do, you will stay in that electrified ball of wool for a long time, and it will stop you from being able to think. It'll immobilize you. You won't be able to do things. You get overwhelmed with everything. So yeah, as me, that if I can see that as, all right, this is going down right now, but I'm going to play the game and I'm doing it my way. And since that major event where I got myself back together again, I don't allow the fear to consume me anymore. I think of it like a game of chess where I want to make the moves and not let it control what I do. Because you can go off the rails. You can get yourself in major depression. You can get yourself quite down a deep hole. And it can go deeper if you aren't aware of what it's doing to you. And a lot of the time, our brain gets caught up in, what about this? And this is going to happen, and that could happen, that's going to happen. And we don't know what's going to happen until you make the next move. And you want to get all the information that you can about what's going down, what might be the best move to make. But then you choose how you're going to make it, rather than let yourself just get carried away with thinking that this is going to happen and that's going to happen, because it hasn't happened yet. And if we're caught up in all of this whirring around and we're not actually sitting back and going, right, I need to find out more about this. I'm going to find out more about that. Then I'm going to work out my game plan, and then I'm going to deal with it. And that's the best takeaway when it comes to fear that I see, besides having as good, and I would say small group of very supportive people, that if you start wavering, you've got that one that will come up and just tap you on the shoulder and say, come on, girl, you got this. Reach out to those ones as well. Okay, because those very close ones that have got your back will have your back no matter what. But play the game of fear. Don't let it play you. And, since that event that I wrote about in the book, we have had a number of times with the police escort and the ambulance, the paramedics in the ambulance going down that highway to get to that closest hospital. But I just breathe and think to myself, righto, this is what's happening now. This is what I know. There's no point me panicking and going into the electrified bit of wool inside my head, all the bits and pieces of what if and this is going to and blah, blah, blah. I actually take on things very logically now, and it's right. Okay, step one, she's going to the best place that she needs to be. Step two, I'm going home to get the medications and everything else that are in the drawer. Okay, I've had a few practices at it, so I don't lose it as much. Okay, next step, notify a few people, get down there, because there is nothing else at that particular time that I can do to change things. All I can do is keep my head, get myself organised, get things organised for her, and then we see what happens next.
Oh, Suellen, a great share, great tips, and yes, definitely don't entertain what ifs. So, what's the best way for people to get hold of you?
the easiest way to get hold of me is probably to look me up on Facebook. So I have a page which is just Suellen Brook, and that's you can access that for my coaching. And then with the horses, I run a business called Positive Pathway Life Skills, and that's on Facebook as well. And you can easily find me there. There's also a website for Positive Pathway Life Skills, but the coaching side of it that I do online with people is basically you can find me through Facebook.
All right, I love that. So, a couple more questions. What's on the
Mhm.
horizon for the rest of the year? And
Whew, it's been a big year already. We're not even halfway there. All right. So for the rest of the year, I'm really concentrating on working with people online, so that there are just so many wonderful people out there that need they just need support and the guidance and the questions asked to them the right way, and it can literally change things for the rest of their life. Like their life changes once you can get yourself past the hurdle or the roadblock that I say, well, let's get out the Ferrari and we're just going to crash that. Once we get past those things, it changes people's lives. So I'm really working well with the people online. I'm still continuing working with my wonderful clients with the horses outside, because those days very often give me those goosebumps, and you're holding back the tears because you know how incredible it is that they've achieved something or they've understood a concept through working with the horses. And the other thing that I have is that I have this gorgeous, massive, big, like warm blood filly who I will be riding and training probably after August. She goes back to the fellow who's doing some work with her just to finish her off, because he's a super duper rider, did a lot of polo cross, so he's used to just hanging off the sides of horses. So I leave that job up to him. And then I get to work with her afterwards, and she has a very special bit of a long story, but I'm really excited to be working with her and bringing her along and getting to the stage where we can really rock it in some competition under saddle. And next week, I'm looking forward to a whole litter of puppies. So the whelping box is ready to go.
oh, exciting times for you, Suellen. So that's really exciting. So, before I hand over to Jay, is there anything that you'd love to leave the audience with?
I don't think I'm finished with my stories yet. I do have a few other quite interesting ones to tell that a lot of people, there's a couple of topics there of ones that I've been through and come out the other side, reasonably well from, that a lot of people aren't prepared to talk or write about. So I think it's important for me to continue with writing eventually. And I would say, if an opportunity knocks, just open the door and go through it. Open the door and say yes, because you never know where it's going to end up. And I have really changed my whole philosophy on how I think now. When there's an opportunity that arises, I just go through the door. I don't ask why. I don't ask what if I should. Um, if it presents itself, give it a go, because you're going to surprise yourself with what you're actually able to achieve. Yeah.
I love that. Great final words there, Suellen. Just want to say from Jay and I, from the bottom of our hearts, we're so grateful to you. You've been a big part of the book's success and your story. Like, wow, 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 wow. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine it, but I can read it from your story what that was like. So just so freaking scary. So just want to say we absolutely love you to bits. Like, thank you so much for everything, your contribution, the way that you've showed up, all of the support, and for being open and really vulnerable as well about your honest feelings. So, Jay, over to you.
Thank you, Dre. Suellen, thank you so much for trusting us with your story and allowing us to, publish it in Permission to Flourish. Because to me, you sharing your story and trusting us means the world to me. It just shows how so many people have a story to share, and so others can learn from it. And from the book, I love your last sentence: fear is a choice. Fear doesn't know how strong you really are. And that's so true, because I know just from hearing your story and your share today that you're not letting fear overcome you. You are finding ways to deal with it, and you're making the choice not to let it overrule you. And I love that so much. So thank you so much, Suellen, for being a part of this. And I look forward to seeing all the wonderful things that's ahead.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, both of you, for allowing me to contribute and making it known, because we all have a story, and that's one thing that we have issues with, within society at the moment, is everyone's connected, but they're extremely isolated. So we really have to share these stories so that others understand that you're never the first one to go through it. There's always someone else who's been there in those shoes, and we can all help each other. So thank you.
Thank you.